Undercover owner sees Waitress help his disabled daughter. Next day, he changes her life forever. The storm outside whispered through the cracks of the glass as the diner's neon sign flickered. Midnight came quietly that day, but inside, something was about to change lives forever. There, seated quietly in the corner booth, a little girl fidgeted with a spoon. Her eyes danced with innocence, but her trembling hands told another story. Her name was Lily, a sweet child with a disability that made simple tasks mountains to climb. Across from her, seemingly unnoticed, sat a man in a weathered baseball cap and a jacket 2 sizes too big. Nobody knew his name, nor did they care. He looked like an ordinary traveler escaping the cold. But what nobody knew was that he was the man who owned it all. Ethan Price, CEO of Price Point Hospitality, a giant in the restaurant industry. And tonight, he wasn't here as the boss. He was here as a father, one quietly watching. Ethan's eyes never left Lily as she struggled with her food. Her tiny hands slipped again and again, her frustration growing. The waitress on duty, a young woman named Maddie, had been watching too, from afar, while others passed by. Ignoring the struggle, Maddie moved swiftly, yet gently, without fanfare, without an audience. She knelt down beside Lily and whispered softly, "Need a little help, sweetheart?" Lily's eyes lit up in gratitude. Maddie didn't just help, she stayed. She cut Lily's food, made silly faces to make her laugh, and kept checking in even as other tables demanded her attention. To her, Lily wasn't a customer. She was a child who deserved kindness. Ethan noticed every detail. The warmth, the patience, the authenticity. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something deeper than gratitude. He felt hope. But what Ethan didn't know yet was that beneath Maddie's glowing kindness lay a life full of scars. As the night wore on and the diner emptied, Ethan remained at his booth, pretending to nurse his coffee. He overheard 2 co-workers gossiping cruelly behind the counter. "She's always brown-nosing," one snickered, acting like she cares so much. "Pathetic." The other laughed coldly. "Yeah, as if anyone notices. She's broke and desperate. No one's handing her anything special." Ethan's jaw tightened. The very culture he thought his company represented had clearly rotted under middle management. But he stayed silent, taking mental notes. Maddie never flinched, not even when they openly mocked her. She clocked out without confrontation, quietly wiping tables before disappearing into the snowy night. The next morning, Ethan couldn't shake the image of Maddie's kindness or the cruelty she faced. He had no more. So, before sunrise, he instructed his assistant to pull her file. What he discovered only deepened the mystery. Maddie was a single mother of 2, struggling through night shifts to make ends meet. She had taken extra shifts when others refused, and never once complained. Ethan was stunned. How had a person with so much heart slipped through the cracks of his leadership? Worse yet, how had people like those cashiers been allowed to thrive? Furious but composed, Ethan made a decision. Today, he would walk in not as the undercover customer, but as the owner. But first, he wanted to test them. Late afternoon, Ethan disguised himself again and visited the diner during Maddie's shift. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Maddie greeted him with the same warmth as before, this time remembering his regular order. The other staff, however, were colder, disinterested, dismissive. When a homeless man entered seeking warmth, Ethan watched closely. The cashiers mocked the man mercilessly once he stepped out. Maddie, however, secretly followed him outside with a warm meal. Ethan's heart pounded. This wasn't just about kindness anymore. This was about character, something many on his payroll clearly lacked. The twist came hours later, when Ethan decided to reveal himself. As the final customers left and Maddie cleaned up, he approached the counter. The staff recognized him this time, and the room froze. The gossiping cashiers fumbled with their aprons, color draining from their faces. Maddie stood still, confused but polite. Ethan spoke calmly but firmly, eyes locked on those who mocked. I've been here for 2 nights. Watching. Listening. I know everything. Silence. He turned to Maddie. But what I saw most was you. Tears welled up in Maddie's eyes as Ethan continued. Your compassion doesn't go unnoticed. Starting tomorrow, you're not just a waitress. You're being promoted to senior manager. Full salary, full benefits, and a seat at our leadership table. Gasps echoed through the diner. But Ethan wasn't done. He turned back to the cashiers, their mouths agape. And you too? Your employment ends now. My company doesn't tolerate cruelty or entitlement. Clean out your lockers. Without another word, security, already briefed in advance, escorted them out quietly. The sun had already set when Ethan and Maddie sat at a booth to discuss the diner's future. Maddie trembled, overwhelmed by the day's events. Ethan smiled. I saw the way you treated my daughter. That was real leadership. People like you will reshape this company, not those hiding behind fake smiles and cruel whispers. Maddie wiped tears from her face and whispered, Thank you. I was just doing what felt right. Ethan nodded slowly. That's exactly why you're the future of this place. But just when peace seemed to return, Ethan's phone buzzed urgently. He excused himself, stepping outside into the biting cold. His assistant's voice came through, tense and hurried. Sir, we've been digging into those former cashiers you fired. It's bigger than you think. They were part of an organized ring, siphoning money and forging checks across multiple diners. Ethan's stomach dropped. Are we exposed? He asked sharply. The answer chilled him. Yes. And they know you're the one who blew it open. You and Maddie may have just made powerful enemies. Ethan stared at the snowy parking lot, heart pounding. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Maddie had no idea yet, but she was no longer just a manager. She was now the key to dismantling something much darker and far more dangerous. Ethan tightened his coat and stepped back inside, locking eyes with her. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but together, they had to prepare. Because kindness had triggered a storm of retaliation, and the real battle for the soul of the diner chain. If you believe stories like Maddie's deserve to be heard, and that standing up always matters, don't just watch in silence. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and share this video to remind others. Kindness isn't weakness, it's power. The air inside the diner felt heavier when Ethan stepped back inside. Maddie looked up from the staff schedule she had been revising, her face hopeful after the whirlwind promotion. Ethan's expression, however, had changed. Serious, guarded. She noticed instantly. Is everything okay? She asked softly. Ethan hesitated. How do you tell someone that they're about to be caught in a storm they never asked for? Before he could answer, headlights flashed through the windows. 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Not government vehicles this time. They looked different, aggressive, tinted windows, engines idling long after parking. Ethan's instincts, honed through years of boardroom battles and hostile takeovers, screamed trouble. He gave Maddie a subtle signal. Go lock the side doors. Now. Confused but obedient, she disappeared to secure the exits. Just then, the front door burst open. In walked a man Ethan recognized immediately from the files his assistant had sent earlier. Brandon Vega, ex-regional manager, fired 2 months ago for restructuring, but suspected of skimming profits for years. Vega wasn't alone, flanked by 2 burly men in leather jackets. He walked in like he owned the place. His eyes scanned the room and landed on Ethan. Smugness dripped from his voice. Well, playing diner games, Ethan? Cute. You cost me everything. Ethan kept his cool. You cost yourself everything, Brandon. You broke the law, exploited my staff, and turned my business into a criminal playground. That ends now. Vega smirked darkly. You think this is over because you fired a couple of minimum wage punks? You just stepped into a world you don't understand. He leaned in. You're messing with more than just me. Maddie reappeared behind the counter, wide-eyed but calm. Ethan subtly gestured for her to call the police, mouthing silently, "911 now." As Vega ranted, Maddie slipped away unnoticed, her hand steady as she dialed. Vega's threats grew uglier. See, this whole chain has been part of something much bigger, moving product through the back doors for years. No one cared. Not your middle management, not corporate, until now. And you made enemies, Ethan, real ones. Ethan stood his ground, but tension rippled through him. His thoughts raced. How deep did this go? Drugs? Stolen goods? Human trafficking? He had built this brand on family values, and now it was rotten at the roots. Suddenly, outside sirens wailed. Red and blue lights bathed the diner in urgency. Vega's confidence cracked. His men shifted uneasily. Maddie had done it. Police flooded in seconds later, ordering the intruders to the ground. Vega resisted, but Ethan stepped forward boldly. "Don't make this worse, Brandon. You're finished." Within minutes, Vega and his thugs were cuffed and escorted out. But even as they were hauled away, Vega's parting words echoed like poison. "You've only scratched the surface. They'll come for you, Ethan, and her too." The aftermath came quickly. News broke within hours. Undercover owner foils major crime ring in his own restaurant chain. Media vans camped outside. Federal investigators flooded corporate offices. Every franchise was audited. Ethan spent sleepless nights untangling layers of deceit planted by corrupt executives and managers. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. A nationwide network of stolen goods distribution, illicit money laundering, and exploitation, all under his nose. Maddie stayed by his side through the chaos, promoted officially to director of operations. Together, they fired dozens, restructured the entire management team, and rolled out new ethics policies and anonymous reporting systems. But the war wasn't over. 3 months later, Ethan received a chilling letter. No return address. Inside, a single sentence: "The syndicate doesn't forget." It was clear Vega wasn't bluffing. The organized crime network they had accidentally exposed was bigger than anyone realized. Federal protection was offered, but Ethan refused to run. He and Maddie began hosting community outreach programs, publicly aligning themselves with law enforcement and reform advocates. They doubled down on transparency and accountability. Soon, public support grew. Customers who once stopped by for a simple meal now came because they believed in the mission. Despite sleepless nights and subtle threats, Ethan never stopped. Neither did Maddie. Their story became a movement, inspiring whistleblowers across the country to stand up in their own workplaces. But even as they built something new from the ashes, the shadow of danger never truly lifted. The final twist came when Ethan reviewed footage from a small, struggling location in Ohio months later. A familiar face popped up on the security feed. Vega's right-hand man, recently released on bail, was spotted entering through the back at midnight. Ethan froze. The syndicate wasn't done. He called Maddie immediately. Her voice was steady. "Do we stop now?" she asked. Ethan stared out his office window at the glowing diner signs, symbols of company reborn, but still under threat. His answer was resolute. "No, we keep going. We shine so bright they can't hide anymore." The war wasn't over. But for Ethan, Maddie, and everyone who believed that kindness could beat corruption, the real battle had just begun. So if this story moved you, if you believe standing up matters and no good deed should go unnoticed, don't leave quietly. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs courage today. Together, we expose the shadows. Together, we choose justice.